Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's iVibes Crochet, and in today's video I'm gonna share with you 5 projects that you can make, and that's pretty simple to make if you are a beginner. I started crocheting in January of 2024, so January of this year, so it's gonna make 1 year in a few weeks since I've been crocheting, and since then I've made quite a few things. Here are a couple of my most recent projects. This coaster that I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite things that I've made so far. I've also made this origami crochet gingerbread man. I made a ton of hats. This is one of the ruffle hats that I made. This one is too big, so I held on to it. Haven't decided if I'm going to frog it or not, but this is a ruffle hat that I made. I made quite a lot of the ruffle hats, and it's actually, it looks complex, but it's actually the very first thing that I crocheted as a new crocheter. And I've gotten a lot of orders for those ruffle hats, and over time I've gotten a lot better at them, but it's the first thing that I crocheted. I also crocheted, well, let me just go get it. So I also crocheted this this cute little mushroom poppet. It's so cute. As you can see, it has its flaws. This is the very first one I made, so there were some mistakes. You can see that there's a hole right there. But I love it. I'm gonna keep it. I'm not gonna frog it. I think it's so cute, and I'm just gonna leave it as decoration. I also made this granny stitch hat, and I have a pattern on my channel and a tutorial, not a written pattern, but I have a video tutorial of this hat on my channel. And I made these cute little newborn hats. So those are only some of the projects that I've crocheted so far, some of the ones that I really loved, and I just started in January of this year. Crocheting is one of those crafts or hobbies or skills where the more you practice, the better you get. So I wanted to share with you 5 beginner friendly projects that you can work on to start practicing your craft. And these projects that I'm going to mention, they're pretty easy to make. I'm also going to share with you a link to a video tutorial right here on YouTube, so stay tuned. So the first project that you can start working on as a newbie crocheter is a hat. Yes, when I first started crocheting, that is the very first thing that I made, is a hat. And the reason why hats are so simple to make is that you're usually only working with 1 stitch at a time. So there are a couple of projects that usually call for some complex stitches, but with hats you're typically only working with a single crochet or a double crochet, and you're doing those stitches all the way around the hat. And the way you start a hat is pretty easy as well. Usually you start with a magic circle and you do some single crochets into that magic circle, and you keep increasing with single crochets or double crochets around until you do the circumference of the hat, and then you start crocheting the body and the brim. So hats are usually pretty easy projects to start with if you are a newbie crocheter and don't know a whole lot of stitches or a whole lot of techniques, because it doesn't really call for a whole lot of extraness. The other day I was working on a crochet origami Christmas tree, and that called for quite a lot. I ended up quitting not even halfway through because it was just too complicated, and it advertised itself as a beginner friendly project, but it was not. So I'm going to share with you a really simple crochet tutorial for a beanie, which is very popular this season now that it's winter. And the tutorial is by Jonna Martinez, and I'll link I'll put a link to her video in the description box. The second thing that you can make, believe it or not, is a scarf. And if you're wanting to gift something to someone around this time, a scarf and a hat is a perfect thing to gift them. So scarves are pretty easy to make. Much like hats, you're working with a simple stitch like a single crochet or a double crochet, and sometimes they get a bit more complicated than that, but usually with scarves you're doing rows and rows of like the same thing. So you might start off making a chain, and then the next row is like 64 double crochets, and the next row is 64 double crochets, and the next row is 64 double crochets, or whatever the case may be. So you're basically repeating the same thing throughout the whole project. So there's not a whole lot of joining and turning and connecting this end to that end. It's not that complicated. It's very simple to make. So number 2 is scarves, and I'll post a video tutorial for a very simple crochet scarf that you can start working on, and it's by Hooked by Robin. So the third beginner friendly crochet project that you can start working on is the crochet dishcloth or washcloth. Now, before I started crocheting, I had no idea that we could make washcloths. And the fun thing is you can use whatever color combinations you want. And sometimes the craft stores like Joann will sell the scrubby yarns that you can utilize to make like the washcloths. But if you're just starting out, I recommend starting with something simple like acrylic or cotton yarn so you get the practice. And much like scarves, you're crocheting row by row. You're not doing a whole lot of joining and connecting and twisting and all that extra stuff. And washcloths tend to be pretty small, so it may not take a whole lot of time to finish. I'll also post a video tutorial here on YouTube by Amanda Crochets in the description box, so you have something to follow. So number 4, the next project you can start working on as a beginner crocheter, and that's usually beginner friendly, is a coaster. And the coasters are usually flat or square, and it's the same with the scarves and the washcloth. You typically do a row, or you crochet in a round, and then you just increase and repeat that until you finish your project. So again, you're not doing a whole lot of twisting and bending and all this extra stuff. You're making a simple pattern. You're crocheting around with either single crochet or double crochets, and you're just repeating and increasing as you go. Now all of these projects I mentioned can get a bit more complicated, but I'm sharing with you like beginner friendly patterns. Now coasters, hats, scarves, dishcloths, they can get a bit more complicated than the patterns that I'm sharing with you. You can get into using multiple colors, you can get into using different stitches, you can get into doing different textures, all kinds of stuff. But I'm sharing like the beginner friendly tutorials and patterns, so you can have something that you can practice until you're ready to graduate to the next level and maybe start doing color changes and all this other stuff. So a lot of these projects called for repetitive movements, so you'll get a good chance to practice a single stitch or practice a technique and get really good at it before you're ready to move on or graduate to the next thing. So I will drop a link to a video tutorial by Crochet and Tea for a flat circle coaster that's beginner friendly. The next beginner friendly crochet project that doesn't require too much that you can start working on and is one that I really love. I love the granny stitches. I think they are so pretty. This is a hat that I made with granny stitches, so it's something, and it just combines double crochets really, so I love that stitch. The last project that you can work on as a beginner crocheter that's beginner friendly is the crochet granny square. I love the look of granny squares, and normally it's the same thing as the other projects. you're picking a stitch or a cluster of stitches and you're just kind of repeating that same thing throughout the entire project. So they're easy to make, and then you can use them to make a variety of different things. You can put them together to make a sweater, which might be a little bit more advanced, or you can make a pair of pants, a skirt, whatever you can think of. I just love the way that they look. They're so pretty. And like the other projects, I am going to post a link to a beginner friendly tutorial by Secret Yarnery here on YouTube. So that's it, y'all. If you're new to crocheting, don't get discouraged. There are a lot of beginner friendly and free projects and tutorials out there, especially right here on YouTube. This is where I came to learn when I started crocheting, and a lot of times the patterns are, you know, the video creators are usually very mindful that they have an audience watching who are learning and probably crocheting along. So I found a lot of great tutorials for what I want to make right here on YouTube. If you want to get fancy, if you like to have something that you can read, then Etsy is a great place as well to find and purchase patterns, a lot of times at a very affordable price. All right, y'all, so that's all I have for today. Those were your 5 beginner friendly crochet projects that you could start working on today. You can make a beanie, you can make a scarf, you can make a dishcloth or a washcloth, you can make a granny square, or you can make a coaster. I'll put a link. I've included a link to video tutorials for all of those projects if you want to learn how to make them. And thank you for watching this video. If you found it helpful, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more tips, tricks, and ideas. Bye.